Welcome to the community kitchen. My name's Charlotte and today I'm going to be showing you how to crumb coat a sponge cake. Today we're going to use a cake turntable and a couple of palette knife tools. So I've got my sponge cake ready here. Just got a little Victoria sponge cake. This is just 2 layers and I've sandwiched them together with some buttercream. You can use a bit of jam as well if you want, or a bit of lemon curd. And I've also secured my sponge onto my cake board, my cake card, with a little bit of buttercream underneath, so it's not going to slide around when I'm trying to crumb coat my cake. I've also made up some buttercream. This is just like a traditional American style buttercream of half butter to icing sugar, whipped with milk until it's fluffy and light and soft. You could use Swiss meringue, Italian meringue. You could even use cream to your whipped cream to do your crumb coat. So the first thing we're going to do is talk about turntables. So I've got a cake turntable here. This is a really valuable tool and really useful to have in your cake decorating journey. I really recommend getting one of these. Okay. And the other thing I've got is something to steady my board, my cake board on it with. So this is from like a hardware store. It's kind of like silicone netting. That's just going to help keep my cake even more stable. So I'm just going to pop my sponge onto my cake board, my turntable. So crumb coating is really great for getting that first initial coat on your sponges. So you can either crumb coat to achieve a naked effect. It's quite popular on wedding cakes, or you can crumb coat as your initial coat before you then put your next layer of frosting or ganache. It keeps all the crumbs in, as it kind of suggested in the title, and it will help you get a really lovely smooth finish. So what I've done first on this sponge was I just trimmed off the top to take any doming off, to give it a nice flat, to give myself a nice flat surface. If you start with a nice flat, straight cake, you'll end up with a nice flat, straight result. So I'm going to take a little bit of my buttercream onto my palette knife. This is my preferred palette knife. It's just a small stepped palette knife. I've also got a large stepped palette knife, which you might find a bit easier to use, or you can use a flat palette knife without a step. This is my personal favourite. Okay, and I'm just going to mix my buttercream up a little bit in the bowl just to make sure it's nice and soft. It has to be super soft. Okay, and I'm going to get a bit of buttercream on the end of my palette knife, just on the one side, and I'm going to start pasting it onto the sides of my cake. And it doesn't have to be super neat at first, okay? It can just be a little bit messy. Remember, this is your crumb coat, especially if you're not leaving it naked. This is your first coating to get it all looking really nice and smooth, okay? So you can see I'm taking little bits at a time of the buttercream and pasting it on the cake, and I'm using the turntable to move the cake for me. So I am tilting my palette knife a little bit, but I'm mainly using my turntable to do the work. I'm not putting my palette knife around the cake. The palette knife stays pretty much in the same place. Okay. I'm going to put a little bit on top as well. Again, I'm using my turntable to pull the palette knife around the sponge. Can you see that my palette knife doesn't really move? It's my turntable that moves. And it can be a bit fiddly at first. Once you get the hang of that, you're going to be really happy that you did. Okay? So then just for our final stages of the crumb coat, I'm just going to take my clean palette knife now, hold it up against the side of the sponge, and I'm just going to drag my palette knife around the cake using the turntable to move it for me. Okay. You can neaten up around the top a little bit. And you can see that I've covered my cake. It's got a crumb coat, so that doesn't mean a thick coat. We're not having a thick coat of buttercream. We've sealed those crumbs in. I've got a nice coat on my cake, and that can go in the fridge now until I'm ready to put my next layer on.